Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome you all, beta. Be safe and keep safe your family and your close ones safe. Stay at home, beta. And so today I'm going to discuss with you about the cleft lip and cleft palate. The dictionary meaning of cleft is a crack, fissure, split or gap. So anyone we can define this one in this into the cleft. This is basically a congenital birth defect and it is characterized by complete or partial split gap cleft of either lip or palate, or it can be both. Cleft lip and palate both can be there. It's not life threatening unless associated with other syndrome, and if it is a syndromic, then there's a risk of life. It's a life threatening. The clefts of the lip, alveolus, hard and soft palate, they are most common congenital abnormalities of orofacial structures. All the children, those who are born with cleft lip and palate, they need a thorough pediatric assessment to exclude any other congenital abnormalities associated with them. Regarding the incidence of both cleft lip and palate is 1 into 600 live birth, and if we talk about isolated cleft palate, it is 1 into 1000 live birth. This incidence in oriental group is 1 into 500, and it decreases in black population, and 1 into 2000. The highest incident of cleft lip and palate, this occurs in the Indian tribes of Montana, that is United States of America, 1 into 276, and there are several distinct subgroups of this cleft lip and cleft palate. They exist, namely like cleft lip with or without cleft palate, cleft palate alone, or there can be submucous cleft palate. So it's a basically classification of the cleft lip and cleft palate, and it's you can say that its association either both are with them, or either cleft lip is alone or cleft palate is alone, and also submucous cleft palate. So the typical distribution of cleft lip regarding the incidence is cleft lip, if alone is there, it is around 15%, and cleft lip and palate both, they are having 45%, and isolated cleft palate is 40%. So this cleft lip and palate, it predominates in the males, while cleft palate alone, this appears to be more common in the females. And in a unilateral cleft lip, the deformity affects left side in 60% of the cases. Before going into the detail of cleft lip and cleft palate, embryological background is very important. We should know, and we must know that face, and we should must know about the embryology of the face. It's very important in defining, in understanding the process, in understanding the pathology, in understanding how this cleft lip and cleft palate is going to be formed. So the face, it is formed by fusion of a number of embryonic processes, and around 4th week of intrauterine life, 5 branchial arches develop at the site of future neck. Here we can see in the this picture the pharyngeal arches. It's a stage 4, 32 days, and it's around 35 somites. So here we have pharyngeal arches. This is the nasal placard, nasal pit. It's divided into the two parts: optic placard, frontonasal prominence, then there's maxillary. So this area is very important in the formation of cleft lip or cleft palate. Then comes the mandibular, second pharyngeal arches, third, fourth, and then the rest of the body. So the first arch, that is mandibular arch, it's uh, play a role in the development of nasomaxillary complex. So this is all around the nasomaxillary process. Mandibular arch, it give rise to maxillary process from the dorsal end. So this is mandibular arch, mandibular process, and here it is a maxillary process. And with the formation of the nasal pits, nasal placards, there are frontonasal process. This divides into a medial and lateral nasal processes, uh, and two, basically two, lateral nasal process and medial nasal process. So here at a week 7, a human face, that is embryo face, looks like this one. We can see here frontonasal prominence, we can see medial nasal prominence, then lateral nasal, then this is maxillary prominence, and this is nasolacrimal groove. And how this is, there is the formation of the nostrils. Maxillary process, it fuses with medial and lateral nasal processes to form the upper lip and primary palate. Here you can see here in this picture the maxillary process, it fuses with medial. This is the medial nasal process, and yellow one is the nasal pits. So they they fuses with this is the lateral and this is the medial, and it this is the black one is the nasal pit, the yellow one is medial nasal process, and purple one is the lateral nasal process. So this fuses with the maxillary process that is formed from the dorsal aspect of the mandibular process, and it forms the upper lip and the primary palate. Here we can see that primary palate is here, and then formation of the upper lip. Then the development of palate, it begins in the 6th week, and this develops from the primary palate. Primary palate basically formed from the medial nasal process, and secondary palate from the maxillary process. So this is the maxillary process, this is intermaxillary segment. So here is the formation of the primary and the secondary palate. So palate is formed by the contribution of three structures: maxillary process, then palatal shelves given off by the maxillary process, and a frontonasal process. This frontonasal process, it gives rise to premaxillary region, while palatal shelves from the rest of the palate. And regarding the development of lip, the lower lip is formed by the fusion of mandibular processes of the two sides, and upper lip is formed from the medial nasal and the maxillary process we already discussed in the previous slides. And the failure of merging between medial nasal and maxillary process, this occurs at 5th week gestation on one side or both sides and results into the cleft lip. So here we can see this is the whole oral cavity, how it looks like. This is the maxilla and the upper lip. This is the primary palate, palatal shaft, and gives rise to the secondary palate and nasopharynx. So this is the brief introduction regarding the embryology. And if we talk about the etiology of the this cleft lip and palate, so genetic predisposition and environmental some components are there. There's a family history is there of the cleft lip and palate and it is more common in first degree relative. They are more incidence is more common in first degree relative with family history, and it increases the risk of 1 into 25 live births. Genetic influence is more significant in cleft lip and palate than the cleft palaton. So it is more common in cleft lip or in the cleft lip and palate rather than alone cleft palate is there. Chromosomal abnormalities are also there. Some environmental factors also there, like maternal epilepsy and the drugs. Drugs include steroids, diazepam, and phenytoin. The role of antenatal folic acid supplement in preventing the cleft lip and palate, this remains equivocal. So over 150 syndromes, they are associated with the cleft lip and palate, like Stickler syndrome, which includes ophthalmic and musculoskeletal abnormalities. There is Sprinters, that is cardiac anomalies, Downs, Epert's, and Treacher's Collins syndromes. They are most commonly frequently encountered along with the cleft lip and palate. And if there is an isolated cleft lip deformity, there is a sequence that is known as Perry-Robin sequence. It remains the most common syndrome that includes isolated cleft palate, retrognathia, and posteriorly displaced tongue, that is glossoptosis, which is associated with early respiratory and feeding difficulties. So the cleft lip abnormalities in the cleft lip, these are basically the direct consequences of disruption of the muscles of upper lip and nasolabial region. So here we can see this is the cartilage, blue one is the cartilaginous part, and these are the muscles A, B, and C. These are the groups of the muscles. So these facial muscles then can be divided into three muscular rings of Delier, that is nasolabial muscle ring, that is the A1 around the nasolabial area, and then bilabial muscle ring that surrounds the oral aperture. This is the bilabial muscle, and then labiomental muscle ring that develops the lower lip and the chin region, that is around here. So around total three muscular rings, and it includes around almost the nine muscles, group of muscles are there. And if we talk about the unilateral cleft lip, in a unilateral cleft lip, the nasolabial and bilabial muscle rings are disrupted on one side. So it's a deformity between first two groups A and B, that is nasolabial and bilabial. On one side, they are disrupted, and in resulting in asymmetrical deformity involving external nasal cartilage, nasal septum, and anterior maxilla, that is the premaxilla. So here it is a deformity which happens on one side. So these deformity, what includes, they influence the mucocutaneous tissue and causing the displacement of nasal skin onto the lip, and a retraction of labial skin, as well as changes to the vermilion and lip mucosa. Here we can see everything is happening, and all these changes needs to be considered in planning the surgical repair of the unilateral cleft lip. So it's very important that we should know the embryology, we should know the muscle groups in correcting the surgical repair in cleft lip or cleft palate. And in cases of bilateral cleft lip, in bilateral cleft lip, the deformity is more profound, but it is usually symmetrical, not asymmetrical. The two superior muscle rings are disrupted on both sides. So A and B, they are both disrupted on both sides, right and left. So they are producing a flaring of the nose that is caused by lack of nasolabial muscle continuity, and a protrusive premaxilla, and there's area of skin in front of premaxilla, divide of muscle known as prolabium. Here we can see this is the bilateral cleft lip deformity. So as in unilateral cleft lip, the muscular, cartilaginous, and skeletal deformities influence the mucocutaneous tissue, which must be respected in planning the repair of bilateral cleft lip. So it's very important in doing this one, the surgery of the cleft lip in cases of bilateral cleft lip. And regarding the cleft palate, embryologically, there are two varieties of palates, primary and secondary. The primary palate, it consists of all anatomical structures those are anterior to incisive foramen, namely alveolus and upper lip. And secondary palate, this is the remainder of palate behind this incisive foramen, dividing into hard palate and more posteriorly the soft palate. This cleft palate results in failure of fusion of the two palatine shelves. This is important to know. And regarding continuity of the cleft palate types, so cleft palate, it can be soft palate only or both soft and hard palate. Here we can see cleft palate in the soft palate area, soft cleft palate, and it's cleft palate soft and hard, both palates are involved in this picture. So incomplete cleft palate is there when cleft of hard palate remains attached to the nasal septum and the vomer, then it's known as incomplete. And when the nasal septum and vomer are completely separated from palatine processes, then it's known as a complete cleft palate. Regarding the soft palate, if we talk about the normal soft palate, this closure of the velopharynx. What is the velopharynx? Velopharynx, these are the structures of the soft palate and lateral and medial pharyngeal walls, which are essential in a normal speech, because the air has to be comes out from the lungs and the vocal cord movements which is going to produce the voice. So this velopharynx function is very important in the speech, and this is achieved by five different muscles functioning in complete but coordinated fashion. And in general, these muscle fibers of the soft palate, they are oriented transversely with no significant attachment to the hard palate. I will show you in the upcoming slides. And in a cleft of the soft palate, these muscle groups are oriented in anteroposterior direction, inserting into the posterior edge of the hard palate. Here we can see that this is the cleft of the soft and incomplete cleft palate of the hard palate. Here we can see these are the muscle groups which are basically in the midline without having a prominent insertion point, are very important. And in cases of soft palate cleft, they are inserted anteroposteriorly. And if we talk about the hard palate, the normal hard palate, it is divided into three anatomical and physiological zones. The central zone, that is palatal fibromucosa, this is very thin and it lies directly below the floor of the nose. Then comes maxillary fibromucosa, it's a thick and contains a greater palatine neurovascular bundle. Then comes gingival fibromucosa, that lies more lateral and adjacent to the teeth. So in performing surgical closure of cleft palate, the change is associated with the cleft must be understood to obtain an anatomical and functional repair. So here the three anatomical zones of the hard palate, that is palatal fibromucosa, then maxillary fibromucosa, and gingival fibromucosa. And if we talk about just a brief review or brief explanation regarding the classification of the cleft lip and palate, there are a number of classifications present, but here we will discuss only this Laschel classification. It's a simple classification which is presented by Ockhriens in 1987, and it's like the lip, alveolus, then comes hard palate comes the soft palate, then hard palate, then alveolus, and the lip. This is from the right to the left. Here we classify this cleft lip and cleft palate classification. So this is all a brief introduction and a brief explanation review of the cleft lip and cleft palate, regarding the embryology, regarding the incidence and etiology of the cleft lip and cleft palate. So if you have any questions, you can ask me, and I will try to explain that one. So again, we are suffering from a tough time. Our whole world is suffering from a tough time regarding the pandemic of the coronavirus. So my advice and my sincere uh, advice to you all is that, beta, please be safe, stay home, stay safe, and keep safe your families. Thank you, beta. Allah Hafiz.